Welcome to the University of Washington Runstead Department of Real Estate channel. Be sure to subscribe, as each week we will be posting new content with interviews from professors, graduate students, and other industry professionals. And be sure to be part of the conversation by posting your thoughts and comments below. Today we have 4 students from the newest class. This latest cohort has 30 members, including 5 international students. And a couple of them agreed to come on today to share their personal experiences after finishing their first quarter in the program. What brought you to the program? Tell us about yourself.
I decided to do the program. I've been a broker for about a year now, and before that I was working for a big West Coast developer, and after being in the industry for a long time, I just thought that this might be a good opportunity to excel my career and learn some of the technical mechanics behind deals and get that technical training that I had never experienced before. This is a really cool new perspective for it. So
my name's Andy Schock, 28 and first year in the MSRE program at the University of Washington. Was a UW undergrad as well, graduated in 2014. It was a degree in economics and bounced around a few tech jobs and then jumped into the real estate industry in about 2018. It took me down to Southwest United States, spent about a year in Nevada, down in Las Vegas doing some value-added investment work, and then popped up to Seattle when COVID was starting to settle in and the upside of Vegas was quickly going down. So it made sense to look at grad programs in the industry. Had heard wonderful things about the UW MSRE program and fortunate enough to get in over the summer. So here I am.
I came to the program kind of as my third career. My initial career right out of university was living in China, helping Chinese companies come and investors come from China into San Francisco. In my mid-20s, I kind of pivoted again and did a bunch of e-commerce stuff. Everything from owning my own company to helping brands like Procter & Gamble sell on the Amazon platform. I turned 30 about a year ago and said, you know what, not as happy as I want to be. Let me go find something that'll make me happier. I had brief exposure to some real estate through my family and then also through my time in China. And I found the MSRE program and said that's a great way to pivot my career into the career that I want.
I'm Justina from Taiwan. I've been working in commercial banking in Hong Kong for the past several years and developed interest in real estate while handling some of my clients who were in real estate development and asset management back then. And I decided to advance my education and career in Seattle, focusing on real estate finance, and therefore choosing Ronstad for my master's degree and moved from Hong Kong to the Washington State despite the COVID circumstance just several months ago.
So you're finishing up your first quarter. Michelle, tell us what was your favorite part about the quarter?
I'm still active in the industry right now, so juggling school and the working world was a challenge, but definitely something that you're able to do, especially with the virtual environment, right? So that's the big difference. We've never had a situation like this, so balancing everything, actually I found it a lot easier to balance everything, not having as many commuting hours to add to the day, and that definitely made it more manageable. I really appreciate, I already can see the value that the program has for my future just from this first quarter.
I would kind of break my favorite parts into kind of 3 separate buckets. The first being the classes, obviously, and the knowledge. Real estate used to be something that I'd kind of read about nights and weekends in my own spare time. Now I just read about it all the time. So that's been really cool. Second bucket is definitely the people. Not being in classes is unfortunate, but we have a really awesome cohort. And for me, that was what I was looking for, was like a group of like-minded people that share the same interests as far as real estate, the same career aspirations, but also just like a group of people. So I've definitely found a lot of that. And then the third bucket is just kind of like the license to ask. And, this comes up a lot when people are talking about the MSRE program, but the ability to just get in front of kind of whoever you want, just, have 30 minutes with them, an hour with them, has been awesome. I really enjoy networking. And so having basically having like that open door or kind of basically an excuse to email people is awesome. And I've really, really enjoyed that.
The favorite part of the quarter for me was probably just access to the resources that the department is providing so far. I mean, the biggest headline of that is the networking and the events that we've had to do with kind of rubbing shoulders with some people that are in the industry, whether that be our mentors or people that are providing for guest luncheons that have really interesting and valuable input, especially given the current climate. From an academic standpoint, I would agree that actually being able to go through and review course material over and over again through recorded lectures has been more beneficial than I thought it would be. And then pretty grateful for just our cohort that we're coming in with. It's been an interesting adjustment for everybody to make, not being in a classroom together and still being able to build some sort of rapport with everybody that we're with on a day-to-day basis through the variety of online tools that we use. So that has been really quite interesting for us.
You guys have definitely had it probably different than any other group first years coming in. So, but you had many of the same classes that have been offered before. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about, what might have been your favorite class or classes. Tell us, what class do you think about?
I really appreciated Greg Colburn's class, which was financial modeling. I felt like I had a pretty strong handle of Excel before coming into the class, but it definitely has made that, all those equations that you knew existed but weren't quite sure how to figure out, now I know and have a really good grasp of. And I appreciated how his class was structured, and that each week we learned something new and we built on the same type of model that we were already starting the week before. So at the end of the class, we have a really, comprehensive model that we can apply to future business deals or just access for other classes. So I really appreciated his style and just, learning all of those little Excel tricks that really will, I think, be really valuable in the real world.
Yep, I agree. I enjoyed his class last year as well. Noelan, how about yourself? What was your favorite?
One thing that really stuck out to me was the final project in 510, which is the Intro to Real Estate class, taught by Sophia. I took that opportunity to work with two of my classmates, one guy in the MSRE program and another gal who's a CM master's student. And we looked at a site and underwrote it for a development project. So we kind of looked at it and we did three things. We underwrote it as an existing asset and tried to value it. We underwrote it kind of remodeling it. It's a rooming house on the Ave. And then we underwrote it, what it would look like to develop. And that was cool because it's actually like a family friend of mine. So we were able to take that project and give that to him and say like, hey, here's some options of what you can do with this site. You and your family have been sitting on it for 20 years. Here's what, if you want out, here's some options. I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention and make a plug for taking not only the classes in the real estate program, but outside of that. I think everybody here took classes outside of the real estate program, and that's something I really personally enjoyed. Michelle and I were in the construction management class together. We're learning blueprint reading, and then I took a real estate finance class at Foster. So that was also like an awesome experience.
A lot of opportunities outside just the MSRE. And Andy, back to you. What do you think?
Prereq in the first quarter, and that was Tim's class in real estate appraisal. Extremely valuable in that he took a very large and complex piece of text that is applied through industry standards that are expected of appraisers and really kind of parsed it down to somebody who is really looking at real estate as more of an investment opportunity and the general practices behind that. So he was extremely effective in cutting through what would normally for a person be an extraordinarily complicated topic and really boiling it down to just a few general approaches to appraisal and mainly through comparable sales techniques and looking at direct capitalization, which are just kind of the bread and butter of real estate finance. So it was extremely valuable to get that, especially because he is a day-to-day practicing real estate investor and getting some live examples of projects that he has worked on or is working on. It's just invaluable to have that kind of mentorship with the complexity of the topic. So that was really beneficial for us this quarter.
My favorite class will be Leadership in Real Estate by Professor Shannon Affolter. In that class, we were able to learn different leadership styles in a systematical way, and we're able to learn more comprehensively about ourselves and how we develop our own style of leadership. And also, Shannon invited a great volume of professionals from different fields in the real estate industry, which is great for newcomers like me to know that there are various different kinds of jobs existing out there and unimaginable adventures to go after from well-seasoned professionals' points of view. I was also able to reach out to some of the guest speakers that I find really inspiring and connect with them after class, which is really valuable to me.
How do you think this program is going to add benefit to you 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now?
The clear outstanding benefit so far is the network that we'll have access to, not just with the immediate cohort as we build these relationships, but with past graduates of the program and future students down the road too. Clearly very tight-knit and well distributed across the Seattle real estate market. So really looking forward to diving into that pool a little bit more, especially when we're able to do it in a face-to-face manner.
Having been in the industry for a long time already, coming out of and I of course had already developed a pretty good network of folks. And I think coming out of the program though, what I think is going to be the most value for my own career will just be the confidence in knowing that I have a more comprehensive, diversified tool belt of, skills and just the confidence. A lot of things in real estate that you have a gut feel about. And so to be able to defend that gut feel, I think is a really important thing to be able to be effective and convince people that there's opportunity here or risk there. And I think that that's something that is going to be invaluable.
Is one thing, and there's a lot. I definitely echo everything everybody else has said. But one thing, that would be the exposure to different types of pro formas. I looked at pro formas in 4 of my 6 classes this quarter, and every teacher taught it a little bit differently. Every teacher had you structured a little bit differently. Every teacher asked you to get different things out of it. Well, everybody got the same thing out of it, but you went about it in a different way. And I think that's a good preparation for the real world, where I've heard everybody uses a slightly different pro forma, and everybody thinks theirs is the best, but until you go out and kind of taste different ones and look at different ones, you don't really know what it is that you think makes it a great pro forma. So that's the one thing this quarter that I will continue to take through my career.
Changing the topic a little bit, I'll go around the horn and ask each of you guys, we had to all deal with this online, all remote learning. How did it go for each of you?
I'm a people person, so I definitely like to be in class with people, have some of that zero time before class, in between classes and after class. Our cohort made a pretty good push to get connected with each other. We're on Discord. I know a lot of folks are using Slack or some other such technology, like not having to commute. Awesome. Being able to talk with people who, speaking to international students specifically, maybe are more comfortable typing and chatting than they are, with oral communication. For me personally, on the networking side, meeting people face to face, hands down, is better, but it's way more efficient to do it remote, right? You can stack those things 2, 3, 4 of them in an afternoon, and you're not commuting downtown, drinking your 6th cup of coffee for the day. Personally, I believe I've gotten, I would say 90-95% of what I wanted to get out of this quarter. Although it's been remote, I've gotten that much of my goal.
You don't actually have to have English as your second language to benefit from the recordings of the classes. I know that I think every single person in this class at some point was going back to the previous week's lecture to kind of understand how the professor walked through whichever, learning point. So I definitely took advantage of that. And, you have your transcript off to the side for anybody who's not familiar with how the program works, but so you can, search certain terms. And it just really, I hope that coming out of this at some point, recorded lectures become a thing, because it was extremely helpful.
I would say the online format certainly granted a lot of flexibility, especially with this first quarter and adjusting back to an academic schedule that I just simply by the virtue of traveling to and from campus, we wouldn't have had. So as a creature of comfort, it's pretty nice to be able to roll out of bed and just be in the lecture hall right there in front of your computer. That said, there was this an absolutely observable fatigue that took place over students and really especially I think with the professors, you sympathize with them, especially in scenarios where they may be having a lecture where not everybody's super enthusiastic about turning their camera on, and they're really just talking to names on black boxes, and it just there's not much of a personal relationship building with the professor in that scenario. So I do have sympathy on that front. And people have long lecture days, and sitting in one chair for 6 or 7 hours a day could be a day in the office, but if you're really just kind of watching lectures, it may not be as engaging as you would have liked. So yeah, there are pros and cons, but I think ultimately, especially real estate and how of an interpersonal enterprise it is, everybody's really looking forward to meeting face to face at some point.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks for sharing all those. As we get ready to kind of wrap up here, just asking overall, is there anything else any of you guys would like to share about your quarter, your plans, your thoughts on anything?
Having been in the industry for a while, having the student status now is actually very helpful also, just for, people are just more willing to connect with you if you're a student. You can get your foot in the door anywhere and usually have a conversation with high up people that maybe aren't usually accessible. So I think, when everybody was talking about the networking is not just with, people who are our peers, it's networking with some really impressive, folks. So
it's a great point. Suzanne told us that day one when I came in, and that, when you get done out in the industry, they'll look at you as a competitor, but while you're a student, everyone in the industry, in the advisory board or any business, I've been able to say that too, the same thing, and they kind of, will sit down for a cup of coffee or a Zoom call and kind of share how they got in the industry and their plans. So that is definitely a big benefit of the program that opens up for students.
That is so true, especially like the Runstead name, the Runstead program name specifically opens doors. That said, like, you still have to put the legwork in. And, Michelle, I know you put in a lot of work in networking. So it's not like, people are emailing you, asking you to get coffee, or, you just have this like magic list of people that will respond in 10 minutes. You still need to put the effort in, reach out to people, prep for your calls, thank you, just all the normal networking etiquette. Instead of sending, 24 emails and not hearing anything back from anybody, you actually hear back.
Well, thank you, each of you, for coming on today. Look forward to next quarter and seeing you guys. Well, one of these days we'll actually meet in person, but till our next Zoom class, thank you.